Simply stated, Patricia T. O'Connor's book, Woe Is I, is an instructional manual for grammaphobes, such as myself. I definitely consider myself to be a grammaphobe. Grammaphobes happen to be individuals suffering from anxiety due to the very complicated world of grammar. Throughout this book, O'Connor humorously discusses all the various parts of speech, and she also uncovers many hidden secrets relating to those parts. To begin, I'm sure that we all are familiar with nouns. And to me, nouns happen to be one of the simplest things to understand in grammar. And of course, nouns are person, places, or things. O'Connor goes on to discuss, in her first chapter, she talks about pronouns, and I like how she calls pronouns an understudy. I think that's a great way to remember what a pronoun is. The next part that she talks about happens to be verbs, which verbs, those are the ones that happen to give me a fit. I'm sure that they do some of you as well. And as we all know, one of the simplest things to understand about a verb is that they show action. In the opening pages of chapter 4, she discusses verbs, and of course they're easy to detect because of the action that they happen to be involved in. However, and this is what gives me trouble, verbs also happen to be one of the most complicated things because of the tenses, and your verbs have to agree, and oftentimes they don't, and they're not always easy to spot when they're not lining up with each other. Here's some examples that she gave relating to verbs that I'd like to read with you, and it's making verbs agreeable. Okay, so the subject and the verb must agree. If the subject is singular, here we're talking about the tenses, then so is the verb. Ollie stumbles. That's an example she gives. If the subject is plural, the verb also has to be plural too. Here's an example. Stan and Ollie stumble. So if your verb, the action word, does not match its subject, who or what is doing the action, you probably have the wrong subject in mind. An additional part of speech that O'Connor talks about is prepositions. These little words might be small, but they're mighty. They're what gives us as readers direction in our sentences. For example, in the sentence, my umbrella is in the corner. In is a preposition. It tells us where the umbrella is located. I'm sure that we all have heard the rule stating you cannot end a sentence in a preposition. That is not true. O'Connor shares in chapter 11 the living dead, and this chapter right here goes over rules that are outdated or are no longer being used. And so just keep in mind that one of the things that she goes over is it's all right to end a sentence in a preposition. Moving right along, adjectives and adverbs are what I like to consider the entertainment within sentences. Furthermore, they are the rainbows used to describe nouns and verbs. O'Connor shares how these descriptive words can easily get tangled up, creating danglers. The important thing to remember when using these colorful words is to attach them correctly. In other words, adjectives need to connect to the correct noun and adverbs to the correct verb. Here's some examples in O'Connor's book. First, I will discuss adjective and nouns, and I will read the incorrect and then the correct. Dumpy and overweight, the vet says our dogs need more exercise. Not correct. Dumpy and overweight is modifying vet, and that's not what the sentence is trying to convey. The better way, the vet says our dog needs more exercise because she's dumpy and overweight. Dumpy and overweight is modifying the pronoun she's, which of course is talking about the dog. Now for adverbs. I will read the incorrect and then the correct example. Miraculously, we watched as the surgeon operated with the plastic spoon. The adverb miraculously is modifying watched, but that's not really the most important part of the sentence. We watched as the surgeon miraculously operated with the plastic spoon. That's correct because miraculous is modifying operated. And now to end with punctuation. I appreciate how O'Connor describes punctuation. She correlates it to road signs. I think that's a great illustration. I would like to focus on one that gives me fits, and I am sure many of you can relate, and that's none other than the comma. I'd like to read what O'Connor has to say relating to commas. Yeah, I hear you saying, what's a comma or two or three? How can something so small, so innocuous be important? Well, that attitude can get you tossed into grammatical purgatory. You don't believe it? Take a look. Cora exclaimed Fred planned the murder. Without commas, the finger of guilt points to Frank. But add a pair of commas and Cora becomes the suspect. Cora claimed Frank planned the murder. So as you can see, it's rather important to place commas correctly. To conclude, Woe Is I has aided me on my journey in unscrambling, the confusing world of grammar, and it has enabled my readers to have a smooth ride as they read my text.